Over the videos in this series, we have met several daughters of Chinggis Khan and his chief wife Börte. These have been Kojin Beki, Chechiagan, Alaka Beki, and Tumelun. Now we turn to their youngest daughter, Altalun. But Altalun has been the most misunderstood and confused with her half-sisters, her father's children with his secondary wives and concubines. In this video, we'll try and clear away as much of this confusion as possible, and sort out the fate of the most unfortunate of Chinggis Khan's daughters. The issue with these daughters appears to be a case of embarrassment on the part of our imperial sources. That is, the murder of one or several of Chinggis Khan's daughters on the order of the ruling Khans. Their similar names have also done a lot to confuse writers both modern and medieval. The first is Altalun, Börte's youngest daughter, born around 1195 and also known by the diminutive form of her name, Altalun Khan. Then we have a daughter known variously as Altun or Altun Beki, who was born to an unknown secondary wife. Due to the similar names, she is often confused with Altalun. And the third daughter confused in this is Alajin Beki, who was born to someone. She may have been a daughter of Chinggis Khan or a daughter of Urgadai. Neither her mother or father is specified in any account as far as I can tell. Let's start with Altalun, Börte's youngest daughter. She is expressly called the favorite daughter and even favorite child of Chinggis Khan. Regularly, you will see it said in modern literature that she was married to the Uyghur Idikut Barchuk Artegen. However, this is incorrect. Her half-sister Altun Beki married Barchuk, and Altalun's husbands were in fact Olar of the Ulkunut and his son Taichu. Olar was a brother of Chinggis Khan's mother Alalun, but whatever the nature of this union, it must have been short. Olar would have been quite old by the time of Altalun's birth, and basically no details exist beyond this. He must have died soon after the marriage. By a leveret, Altalun then married Olar's son, Taichu. This union was perhaps a better one. Chinggis liked Taichu enough that he gave him a nickname, Zhao or Sechin. We also know that they had a son named Chochimtai, who married two daughters of Great Khan Mungka. We basically have no other information on them beyond this point, and this may be intentional. Rashid al-Din briefly mentions that, after Urgadai's death, his sons had Altalun executed by the general Al-Jigadeh, who was then transferred to the Caucasus. Despite stating that more information would be provided on the incident, Rashid al-Din gives no more details, and it appears in no other official accounts from the Mongol Empire. We might have dismissed it too if it wasn't independently corroborated by an outside account. John de Plano Carpini, a Franciscan envoy who traveled from Europe to Great Khan Guyuk's coronation in 1246. While in Mongolia, Carpina observed that one of Guyuk's aunts had been accused of poisoning Urgadai in 1241 and was to be executed for the crime. Altalun probably did not actually poison Urgadai, but had the misfortune to be blamed for it for uncertain reasons. The manner of Altalun's death upset the imperial family. Guyuk seems to have done it in a secretive way without the involvement of other branches, and when it is mentioned by Rashid al-Din, it's as a condemnation of Urgadai's family. Similarly, Guyuk had also ordered the execution of Temujin, the only surviving full brother of Chinggis Khan. We also know very little about this, and the succeeding dynasty under Mongol Khan had little interest in focusing on such a shameful episode. While on a whole, imperial sources rarely provide details or even mentions the deaths of the royal family and famous generals, the deaths of Temujin and Altalun were regarded as especially shameful. So let's clarify what happened with Altun Beki and the Uyghurs. Again, we have a very confused account of what happened. Rashid al-Din alone gives three completely different and incompatible versions of this marriage. As Christopher Atwood has pointed out, this is probably a reflection of the Tolud Revolution in 1251. This was when the Mongol imperial throne was seized by Mongol Khan, leading to a purge of the descendants of Urgadai and Chagatai and people associated with them. The Uyghurs were among the targets, and in the aftermath, the official history of their interaction with the Mongols was dramatically simplified. From accounts outside of this post-Mongol rewriting like Juveni, we see a messier history. Our story begins back in 1211. The Uyghur kingdom in the Tarim Basin was the first non-nomadic state to fully submit to Chinggis Khan. The Uyghur Idikut, Barchuk, came in person to pay homage to him. In the simplified version that appears in certain sources, Chinggis Khan immediately adopted Barchuk as his fifth son and granted him a bride, Altun Beki, a daughter of an unnamed secondary wife. Then Barchuk served with honor as a prestigious vassal of the Khan. This is a version appearing in Barchuk's Yuanshir biography, The Secret History of the Mongols, and one of Rashid's 3 versions. But what of the other accounts? Rashid al-Din's second version has Barchuk unable to marry Altun Beki because Barchuk's wife was very controlling and refused to let it happen. Only after his wife died, sometime in the early reign of Urgadai, was Barchuk able to marry Altun Beki. Though brief, we see already how incompatible this is with a marriage happening in 1211. Rashid's third version aligns with Juvayni and a few other forgotten hints left in the Yuanshir. Here, as reconstructed by Chris Atwood, Barchuk still submits in 1211 and is probably given the promise of a wife, but essentially has to earn her before the marriage can take place. In what Atwood calls a probationary period, Barchuk first was enrolled as the vanguard commander of Jochi and Subadai in 1217 in their pursuit of Merkit, who had fled into today's western Kazakhstan, and fought with Khwarezm Shah Muhammad on their return. Next, Barchuk partook in a similar role in the Great Invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire in 1219, and the final destruction of the Tangut Kingdom in 1226-27. Barchuk proved his worth and Chinggis Khan finally approved the marriage. But in Juvayni and Rashid's third version, there is a hiccup. After approving the marriage, Chinggis died in 1227 before it could take place. His son Urgadai became Great Khan in 1229 and gave the go-ahead for the marriage, only for Altun Beki to die of undisclosed reasons. Urgadai then approved the marriage of Alajin Beki to marry Barchuk. This time, it was Barchuk who died, so finally, Alajin Beki married Barchuk's son Kesmis. Kesmis only had a few years in him, though he died during the regency of Urgadai's widow, Torigene, who appointed Kesmis's brother, Salindi, as the new Uyghur Idikut. Salindi presumably married Alajin Beki. It is about this juncture that these events were written down to be used as a source by Juvayni and in turn Rashid al-Din. Unfortunately for Salindi, due to his association with Torigene and Urgadai's faction, he was killed in the purges after Mongol Khan's enthronement in 1251. Salindi was violently and publicly executed in Beshwalik and replaced by his executioner and half-brother Ugrinch, a man loyal to Mongol Khan. As for Alajin Beki, she simply disappears and was perhaps another member of the royal family killed on Mongol's order, albeit quietly. After these murders, we get the new version of the Mongol Uyghur history written down in official accounts like the Secret History, the Shengwu Qingzhenlu, and finally the Yuanshir. Rashid al-Din, learning from Juvayni's version, but then also receiving the new official imperial account, simply used all versions he received, which is something he did quite a lot of. What we have outlined is a rather complex, messy marital history, something perhaps a bit demeaning to the memory of a loyal vassal like Barchuk, to indicate he was not immediately honored with a bride. Thus, a difficult to follow, multi-year process was condensed into a single event where the main point, the Uyghur submission and marriage tie, was more important than the specific details. We see similar things throughout these early pieces of Mongol imperial historiography, particularly the Secret History of the Mongols, where chronology is routinely condensed, simplified, or moved around altogether in comparison to other accounts of the same events. These new versions were made during the production of the Secret History on Mongol's order in 1252 and carried through the subsequent pieces of Mongol and Yuan historiography. But in doing so, it was inconvenient to bring up a lady like Alajin Beki, possibly killed on Mongol's order, and anyways a daughter or granddaughter of some secondary wife. The histories written on Mongol's and Kublai's orders spend very little time on Chinggis' children not born to Börte. Thus, the complex Uyghur-Mongol marriage alliance was reduced to what it was supposed to have been: a single and simple marriage conducted in 1211 between Barchuk and Altun Beki. Chinggis Khan's daughters were involved in the consolidation and even rule of his empire, through key marriage alliances and administration. Sadly, most information on them is now lost. For his daughters with his other wives, we have even less information on them, at most a name, like Tora, a daughter of an unknown mother wedded to Arslan Khan of the Karluks at Kailik. In other cases, we don't even have that, such as with Tokuchar and his unnamed wife. Of Chinggis' daughters, Chechigin and Alka Beki were the most successful and acted as governors of the Oirat in Ungut on their father's behalf. Kojin Beki's life is essentially quiet after her marriage. Tumilun, after much trouble, was finally wedded to Chiku and enjoyed a powerful position in Qinghai. But Altalun, much loved by her father, became a scapegoat for the death of her brother Urgadai and was murdered by her nephew Guyuk. Poor Altun Beki seems to have died before her marriage even took place, and Alajin Beki seems to be among the many family members killed on the orders of Menka Khan. A history of the daughters of Chinggis Khan is not just about the lives of these women, but requires careful navigation of confused and often quite biased historical accounts.